Hey, we're live.
I know.
So, welcome everybody.
So let's just wait a couple more minutes, Arthur, and I'm going to go back and put that video back on.
All right.
Human beings, we're wired to be connected. From birth, we look for that connection. Where internet connectivity ends and a non-connected society exists, the desire exists to be connected. Once they find connectivity, this city starts to grow. It grows first from an educational perspective.
No longer can the top 3 goals of education be reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now I truly believe that they need to be relationships, relationships, relationships.
Exploration is not a bucket list where you simply check off places that you have been. You need to realize that you are in a frontier and there's always new discoveries to be made, oftentimes just by changing the way you make the observation.
You're exercising a muscle here every time you exercise empathy, and that's emotional intelligence. Continue that curiosity. Ask questions.
Because of that respect and my willingness to listen and his willingness to listen to me, he ended up leaving the Klan, and there's his robe right there.
This is the world we're playing with right now. And the reality is that we don't really know how it's going to look and what it's about.
So many people are looking for feeding their spiritual hunger. The human nature gap is real. The human nature gap is having ramifications.
What if we take an idea and then we embrace it, challenge our belief systems, challenge our perspectives? And today we're going to take one step beyond, and we're going to go that way and just seek new ideas.
Good evening. Welcome to another TEDx Naperville virtual salon. I'm your host, curator, and executive director, Arthur Zards. You know, we're all suffering Zoom fatigue from either as a student or as a parent or as an employee or employer. And we know how these Zoom meetings can drain your enthusiasm, your energy, pretty much your entire life. And sometimes not only are we participants of these Zoom meetings, sometimes we even have to host them ourselves. But we're going to change that tonight with an exciting speaker. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to introduce our producer, Jonathan Ruff, who is in Nashville.
Everybody.
Jonathan, can you join us for a brief second? Say hi. Being that this is a virtual event, Jonathan is doing the production. And what's the exciting thing that we have
So
today,
we're going to
Jonathan,
have a few
with
polls.
the
We're going to
polling?
have word play. We're going to get everybody to kind of tell us, answer some questions, and really try to get people engaged in the discussion today with your favorite topic, I think, of the year, is Zooming.
Can't wait. All right, thanks so much, Jonathan. And Jonathan's going to bring up onto the screen a link for the Poll Everywhere app. And during the Lynne Franklin's talk tonight, she's going to be asking you some questions, and you can get interactive with us. And a little bit of housekeeping. And there's going to be a little test question, too, that Jonathan's going to pull up when you go to pollev.com/TEDx Naperville. We want everybody to save the date. Saturday, November 14th, we are having TEDx Naperville. It will be a virtual event. Tickets go on sale Thursday, so look for an email later this week for tickets. What's really exciting is that, in line with the theme of tonight of changing up Zoom meetings, TEDx Naperville is going virtual, but we are totally flipping the whole concept of virtual upside down. And for those that know TEDx Naperville and know us, we like to change things up. We like to push the envelope. We like to try new things. We like to experiment. So TEDx Naperville this year will be one giant experiment. So don't expect a 3-4 hour Zoom meeting where you're behind your computer just going like this, watching speakers speak for 18 minutes. It's going to be nothing like that. What we're doing is we're doubling down on the value of the virtual event. We are having speakers coming from Germany, from England, from Amsterdam, from Vermont, San Diego, Los Angeles, Baltimore, somewhere in the Badlands in South Dakota, and even Naperville. So we're leveraging the advantages of the virtual environment and bringing in speakers. And all our speakers are challenged to bring some sort of interactivity to the event. So again, this is not going to be your normal event where you sit back and just watch something on a Zoom channel. That's all that I'm going to leak out for now, but we have a lot of exciting things. We do have a sponsor this evening. This event is sponsored by LabZ. LabZ is an organization that is reinventing the virtual event space. So if you are in a corporate environment and your sales meetings, your corporate meetings, your stand-up meetings, if they're all getting kind of boring because they're all on Zoom, contact LabZ at curious@labz.io. They can help. And this event is powered by LabZ. We are also looking for sponsors for TEDx Naperville 2020. Just go to tedxnaperville.com/participate if your organization is looking at getting involved with TEDx Naperville and this cutting edge virtual event that we have this year. Jonathan, do we have a quick update on the polling tests that we sent out for the pollev.com/TEDx Naperville? Can we bring that up? No? Nothing on the polling yet? Bring it up right now. The question was, what was the theme for the 2019 TEDx Naperville? Why does 2019 feel like so long ago? It feels like it was 10 years ago. Is it just me? I don't even know what the answer was. Oh wait, yes I do. For the Curious was the theme. The One Step Beyond, I think, was the previous year before that. So thank you. And so keep your app and keep the poll handy. We will be referencing that, or Lynn will be referencing that during this evening. But now on to our introduction for our speaker. So Lynne Franklin is an expert on persuasive communication. She coaches leaders and trains teams on how to break down communication silos in their organizations. She wrote a book called Getting Others to Do What You Want. And I really like that title, Getting Others to Do What You Want. Lynne has also given a TEDx talk on how to be a mind reader. And what's really interesting is her talk went viral, and I think it has over 3.6 million views as of today. That's 3.6 million. Lynne is going to give us some ideas to make sure that no one, including us, including me, dies of boredom, and that we make the most of each virtual meeting. I'd like to welcome to the stage Lynne Franklin.
Hi, Arthur. Glad to be here.
So before we begin, I'm going to let you jump right into it. That title of the book, Getting Others to Do What You Want, I understand that has something to do with one of the most toughest meetings you ever had. Can you tell the audience briefly before you start about that tough meeting that you had?
Yes, certainly. We all have had those days on the job that are memorable to us. And for me, it was because of a 14-year-old boy named Fred, who in the moment was standing, 3 feet away from me. But I couldn't tell you anything about how Fred looks in that moment, because the only thing I can see is that he is holding the world's largest machete. If you try to call for help, I'm going to cut you. I am the only adult in a boys group home. Fred left 2 days ago. He ran away and came back. And because I was the only adult, I thought it was my job to tell Fred to go to intake and let them know what he'd been up to so they could clear him to come back in. And Fred said, no, I'm going to my room. I said, Fred, why are we having this conversation? Just go to intake. Now I'm going to my room. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Just go to intake. Now I'm going to my room. So I went to the staff office to call for backup so I have somebody be with the other boys while I worked with Fred to get him to intake. And that was when he followed me into the office, zipped open his backpack, and pulled out what I still believe today to be the world's largest machete. And then he brings the machete down and chops the phone cord, my only lifeline to the outside world. And now I know that I had literally lost my mind. And the only thing I could think of to do was to babble. So I'm standing there saying, but Fred, I like you, and you like me, and you don't want to hurt me. And there's nothing in how this kid's looking at me that's saying he's agreeing with anything that I'm saying. So I just keep babbling. And you don't want to get into the world of hurt you're going to get into if you hurt me. At which point I see Fred blink. And later he'll tell me he started thinking about what his life was going to be like if he knifed me. that Daniel Cottage, where we were, would no longer be his home. The boys in the hallway behind him wouldn't be his friends. I wouldn't be there to help him. And the cops would come and haul his butt off to juvenile hall, and they'd lock him up. But all I saw was the blink. And somehow I knew it was my chance. So I stuck my hand out and I said, Fred, just make it easy on yourself and hand me the knife. And I wasn't sure what he was going to do. And I was scared to death he was going to bring the knife down and chop my hand. But I knew I had to keep it out there. I had to show him that I thought he was a good kid and give him a chance to act like one. I can't tell you how long I stood there sweating through everything I had on until Fred finally handed me the knife. And that's become the litmus test for my job. As long as nobody pulls a machete on me, I'm having a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story and a great beginning of a career of persuasion, of neuroscience and communication. So I love that story, but I'm going to turn the stage over to you and let you lead the conversation. And because I really need to pay attention because I really need this advice big time. I think like a lot of us do, because I want to know how to, yeah, the Zoom things I got Zoom fatigue too. So I'm really interested. So take it away, Lynne.
Okay. So, those of you who are listening, hi. How many Zoom calls have you been on today? This is actually number 5 for me. And, part of what goes on is it's not just what's going on that you can see on the screen. There's also all this stuff that's going on around you. I was doing a Zoom presentation last Wednesday, at which point, as I'm speaking, my dog decides that he really needs to go outside, but I can't leave the screen. So I am sitting there hoping that there will be nothing that I need to look forward to on the floor when I'm done. And he spent my entire time as I was talking for about 10 minutes licking my leg. So talk about distractions. But here's the scoop. We know that Zoom is here to stay. Even once we get through the pandemic, it's incredibly convenient, but it's also disjointed and occasionally disheartening. So what I'm going to ask, because I want to make sure that this presentation is about the stuff that's actually going to help you today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Jonathan to pull up our next poll. And there you go. What words best describe the things you most dislike about video call meetings like Zoom? And what'll happen is that as you answer the question, Jonathan will create a word cloud so we can see the things that are most annoying for people. But here's the truth. Engagement is always going to be important. Connection is always going to be important. And these actually are opportunities. Every Zoom meeting is an opportunity to get engaged and connected. But because I'm a neuroscience nerd and I study how the brain works, let me share a couple of ideas with you that will help your next Zoom meeting, whether or not you're leading or participating, to make it a better experience for you and for everybody else around you. So the first thing you need to know is about how the brain works. And this is the 7-minute rule, which is that people can only pay attention to a talking head for 7 minutes without taking a brain vacation. That's as much time as we've got, which means that every 7 minutes in your Zoom meeting, as you're leading it, you need to include some kind of engagement. You need to ask, the jargon for it is you need to create a state change. What that means is you need to do something that changes the energy in the room. And it can be as simple as asking people to imagine something, or doing a poll like we're doing now, or asking questions, or letting people ask you questions, or having people do stuff in chat. What you need to do is make sure that it's not just you being a talking head, but that you're bringing in other people and encouraging them to interact with you. So remember that 7 minutes is as long as you can go. All right, so just to show you, let's break this up and do a state change right now. Here you go. Okay, lack. Lack. All right, so connection and people and poor, crying, I love this. Delays, lighting, dogs, yeah, because my leg is still wet from my dog licking it last week. And impersonal and distracted. And you're so right. All these things are so true. We're supposed to be connected on Zoom, and we really don't feel that way. Let me give you another idea that you can use to feel more connected on Zoom. And part of it is, For most of you, unless you have a camera that's specially situated in front of your screen, yeah, like me, you've got one right up there, which hovers above your screen. And what ends up happening then is that if you do the Brady Bunch, okay, so bring Arthur back in. So you do the Brady Bunch Brady Bunch view when there are a whole bunch of people on the screen. And what ends up happening is that you start looking at the other people. Yeah, up, down, side, there you go. And then you're not looking at the camera, and people perceive that it doesn't look like you're looking at them. So here's one technique that, I call it the elephant in the room technique. I'm not looking, not looking at me. So what I say to people when I'm in a Zoom meeting is, when I'm speaking to you. It's like a conversation between the two of us. So I'll look at the camera when I'm talking, but when you're speaking, what I want to do is I want to look at you. I want to see what's going on with you. So I'm going to look at your screen. I'm going to look at you in the gallery view to see how you look as you're speaking. I don't want to, so that's, and when you do that up front, people feel, you've set the expectation, so people feel a whole lot more comfortable, and you don't spend the entire time staring at the camera and missing out on all the good visual information that's going on around you. All you need to do is set the expectation. Because part of the problem we have with Zoom too is how our brains work. And our brains really work in 3 different ways primarily. And how your brain works is going to determine how you end up feeling about Zoom. And fortunately, we've got that recorded, because that was part of what went on at my TEDx talk a couple years ago about how to be a mind reader. So Jonathan, so I'm going to ask you the musical question. Are you a looker, a listener, or a toucher? And what I want to do is first show you this video. Let you watch that. Well, yes, right now. Guess who you are right now. And then we'll put on the video so you can see the body language of each of these 3 different types of people. And then you can figure out if the guess you had now is the reality that's the truth for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll the video and watch the body language of the people that are playing with me, and figure out which one, and we'll do an exercise afterwards so that you can figure out who you are. So just be present for this and watch their body language, and then we'll play with ourselves when we get done.
So how can you tell? How can you read people's body language to read your minds? We're going to show you right now. And that means I'm going to bring out our first body language model, James. Thank you, James. James represents 75% of the world. You didn't know this about James, but James is a looker. What that means is that James's brain thinks in pictures and images. And here's how we can tell that James is a looker from his body language. First thing, he stands up tall, he has good posture. Second, he's dressed well, because appearance is important to lookers. The next thing you'll notice about James is that he holds a little stress in his shoulders. Lift up your shoulders a little bit. Yeah, holds his stress there. Next thing, you'll notice he has wrinkles in his forehead, because James looks up when he remembers something he has seen, and he looks up more often than most of us do. Next thing you'll notice about James is that he has thin lips. Suck them in. And this is a chicken and egg thing. We're not quite sure why lookers have thin lips, but most of them do. And the other thing about lookers is they give you lots of eye contact. Look at them, look at them, look at them. All of them. Look at all of them. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Okay, now that you know that James is a looker, here are the 2 things you do to build rapport with him. The first is that you give him lots of eye contact, because he literally believes if you do not look at him, you are not paying attention to him and you are ignoring him. The second thing you do with lookers is you give them words that have a visual component to it. I see what you mean, or look at this, or let's picture working together this way. So you use the type of language that is going on in James's brain. Those are lookers, 75% of people in the world. Our next body language model is Marge. And Marge represents 20% of the people in the world. Marge is a listener. What this means is that Marge's brain thinks in words and sounds, And this is the body language that you will see in a listener. First, Marge, not as well dressed as James because appearance is not as important to her. Sorry, Marge. Next, Marge has a tendency to look down and to the left because that's where you look when you're remembering something you have heard. Next thing you'll notice about Marge is that a lot of times she'll put her head in her hand. It's called telephone posture. Other things you'll notice about Marge is that she has a tendency to mumble to herself. Go ahead, mumble. And it's not that she's crazy. It's that she thinks in words and sounds, so she's really literally talking to herself. Another thing you notice about Marge, yep, she's the pen clicker and the banger on the pen on the table. These are listeners, 20% of the people in the world. Thanks, Marge. Thank you. You want to appeal to listeners. You do two things. First thing, you do not give them lots of eye contact. It freaks them out. That's exactly what was going on with that corporate controller. So what you do is that when they're speaking, you look at them and then you look away. And when you're speaking, you look at them and then look away. The second thing you do with listeners is that you use words that are auditory. That sounds good to me. Or let's talk this over. That's the type of language their brain uses, so you're using that to appeal with them. Listeners, 20% of the people in the world. And our final body language model is Marina. And Marina represents 5% of the people in the world. Give her a round of applause. Marina is a toucher. Not what you think. What that means is that Marina's brain thinks in feelings and tactily, And here's the kind of body language you will see in a toucher. First thing, and the biggest tell on touchers is whether or not they've ever met you before in their lives. They are ready to hug you. Second thing you'll notice about touchers is that they are dressed for comfort rather than style. Next thing is that they have full lips. Give them big lips. Same thing. I know. More touchers have full lips. Next thing you'll notice about touchers is that they have a tendency to lean in because they're trying to decrease the amount of physical space between you and them and build rapport that way. Touchers also have a tendency to reach out and touch your arm when they're in conversation with you. And touchers also have a tendency to look down because that's where you look when you're remembering something you have felt. Thanks, Marina. All right, you want to build rapport with touchers, 5% of the people in the world? Here are the two things you do. If you feel comfortable, let them touch you. Appropriately, please. But if you don't feel comfortable, because a lot of us, if you've never met somebody before and they're ready to give you a bear hug, the last thing you want to do is go, because we've all done that and it does not build rapport. So if a toucher is coming at you and you don't feel comfortable, stick your hand out. Give these people a point of contact with you. That's what they're looking for. The second thing you do with touchers is you use language that either has a feeling to it or is tactile. So I want to hear how you're feeling about this. Let's get in touch. Reach out and tell me what you think. That's the kind of language that appeals to touchers, people who process information in feelings and tactily.
Okay, so now you know the 3 types of body language and the 3 types of ways that brains work. So Jonathan, do we want to pull up the poll to see what people thought they were? And as we're doing that, okay, evenly split, evenly split. All right, that's what you thought. Now, is it possible, Jonathan, for us to do it again? To clear this one out and do another one? Because what I want you to do now is do this to figure out who you really are. And in order to do that, what I want you to do is close your eyes and remember an important event in your life. Maybe it was your 10th birthday party. Maybe it was when one of your kids was born. Just remember an important time in your life, a specific event. And now, as you're doing that, I want you to start paying attention to how you're remembering that event. Are you seeing it like a movie or like a series of pictures and images? Or are you remembering what people said or describing what you saw or the experience yourself? Or are you remembering how you felt or how things felt to you? So now take that poll again, because if you were remembering how it looked like a movie, you're a looker. If you're remembering how it sounded or describing it to yourself, then you're a listener. Or if you were remembering how things felt or felt to you tactily, then you're a toucher. And we'll see whether or not this jibes with the, here we go. Okay, so most people are lookers. We got a lot of touchers in the group. Yep, listeners. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for doing this in real time. This is fun. Okay, so we saw some shift here. A lot of us thought we were one thing, but we really are another. Here's why you care about this stuff in the world of Zoom. Most of the people who are on Zoom with you now or at any given point, 75% of the people in the world, these people are lookers, which is why you say to them at the beginning of the meeting, when I speak with you, I'm going to be looking at the camera, but when you're speaking, I'm going to be looking at you so I can see what's going on. Because if you're not looking at the camera, they perceive you as not paying attention to them. Obviously, so lookers love Zoom because we're all together, but are frustrated when they're not getting eye contact. And they're also frustrated when they're looking at the camera because they're not seeing everybody else. What they're seeing is that little black hole in their screen. So that becomes the frustration for lookers on Zoom. Listeners, the frustration for them on Zoom is that, heck, they'd rather be on the phone anyway. So these are the people, frankly, who would rather, not have their picture show up on the screen and just have their name show up on the screen. And frankly, not have your picture show up on the screen either, and just do everything by phone because they want to pay attention to what they're hearing, not be distracted by what they're seeing in the gallery view or the speaker view or the slide view or whatever that stuff. They're listening for the information. That's why Zoom is frustrating for them. For touchers, Zoom is frustrating because obviously there's not a single point of contact here. They can sit closer to the screen, but that doesn't build connection for them. This is why we all have Zoom fatigue. People are there, we're connected, but not in the way we want to be connected. We're not in the presence for touchers. There's all this visual distraction going on for listeners that they don't want to see. And there's too much, there's not enough eye contact, but yet too much eye contact at the same time for lookers. So know this about yourself. And give yourself a break. Remember, we were talking about those state changes. Remember to work that stuff in every 7 minutes. Other things that you can do that can make Zoom more worthwhile, because we've been talking about engagement and connection. And some of it's just smart meeting stuff. So for example, one of the things you can do is send an agenda out in advance so people know what's going to be covered if this is your meeting. And if you're going to be in a meeting, ask for an agenda. What the heck? And make sure that it has a start time and an end time on it. And also ask people for their feedback on the agenda, if there are things that they want to see changed or added or subtracted from it. Because why wait until you're in a Zoom room to get engagement? Get people engaged beforehand and thinking about the meeting beforehand so that they come more prepared. And also for engagement on Zoom meetings, it's really helpful because one of the things that we truly miss about, who knew that we would miss in-person meetings? Because meetings, for years, the surveys said it's the worst part of our working day. And now what we do is we crave this connection, but it's still not that connection that we really want. But one of the things we used to be able to do is you get to a meeting and you sit down and you chat with people beforehand. So to have engagement in a Zoom meeting, allow people the few minutes ahead of time to be able to chat with each other. And if it's a big meeting, then use the breakout room feature in Zoom so people can get together in little clusters and talk with each other. If you want to have a topic for them to discuss, fine, but mostly you just need to give people a chance to connect and talk about non-work related stuff. Because we used to be able to do that in the hallway and we can't do that anymore. So start your meeting, warm people up before you actually get to the topics. Also, let people know that you're going to be checking in with them throughout the course of a meeting, because there will be plenty of people who feel just fine, talking and answering questions and bringing up things and discussing things. There are other people, and maybe they're listeners, who just don't feel comfortable in that atmosphere and won't say a whole lot. So let people know in advance that everybody's opinion is important to you. And you're happy when people speak up and share them. But for the people who are feeling a little reticent, just want to let you know that I'll be checking in with you because I want to know what you think about what's going on too. So engage the people who might be on the periphery and make them feel seen and heard too. And then at the end of the meeting, one of the most powerful things you can do is ask people one or two questions. The first question is, what's the big takeaway you're getting from this meeting? Because it makes people think, okay, of all the things I heard, here's the most important thing. And and then everybody else in the room gets to hear also the most important thing for that person, and to add to it or agree with it. So we reinforce what we've just talked about. Or depending upon if you have a really strategic meeting, the ending question you can ask is, what's your next step now that we've agreed to all of this? And have people commit to the thing that they're going to do next. Because it's not, we have a tendency to, okay, time's up, meeting's over, catch you later. Meeting is an experience, and it's an experience which allows connection and engagement. So use these tools. Once again, every 7 minutes, you need to bring people back in and connect them with you through stories or through activities so that they're paying attention. So Arthur, I know that you had a question about somebody who has who has Zoom fatigue. And the first thing we're going to do is unmute you, Arthur, so that we can all hear you.
And that was my fault. There we go. I'm trying to bring some humanity into this technology. Now I'm taking a lot of notes because I know we just talked earlier, but I just love the biggest takeaway for me so far is setting expectations. I have the challenge from you. I'm like, do I look down? Do I look at the camera? And I think the simple fact that I'm telling people, hey, when I look at the camera, I'm talking to you. When I'm looking down, I'm looking at the screen. It's kind of like when you're sitting down with somebody and somebody puts their phone down and they say, hey, I'm going to listen to you. That's powerful. That's like nobody does that. I want to jump into somebody had a question early on, and I wish they Kevin Brzezowski, who's watching on Facebook Live. I really feel for this guy. He wrote early on, he has 13 to 19 Zoom meetings a day. Good Lord. So I would argue that he's got a different whole set of different problems. That's not just what you talked about, but the actual physical muscle. So can you address what is somebody like that? What, even with all your tips right now, that to me is a whole different level. How would you tackle that?
Mm-hmm. Well, so Kevin, first off, thanks for the question. And second, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. It's terrible. Okay, so you need to know the things that you can do to re-energize yourself between these meetings. So if it's take a walk, if it's if it's get a drink, whatever it is that's going to help you feel calmer or more energetic, those are the things that you want to pay attention to between the meetings that you have, because Lord knows you need a break on this kind of stuff. And it's true for you with all of those meetings. Go into each one of them with a goal. And it will vary depending upon what the meeting is. Once again, neuroscience nerd, I know that one of the most powerful things you can do in the communication world is create a goal for yourself. So it could be that some meetings, your goal is to make sure that that you have the opportunity to present this really important idea, or you have the opportunity to connect with this really important person. You set the goal in advance. And here's the other thing. Once again, neuroscience, nerdland, you actually sit and write the goal down longhand. Because what happens then is that you're moving the information from your short-term memory into your long-term memory, increasing the chances that you remember it during this meeting. Because when you have a goal for the meeting, a goal for yourself for the meeting, that keeps you more engaged. You're in it to make sure that you get what you want out of the experience. And it makes you feel a whole lot less like a victim. So it's, you bring your own engagement in this sense. And it's true. There are probably meetings, Kevin, that you go to where, you just have to show up. But at the same time, we can all tell on Zoom meetings, can't we? The people who are phoning it in. So there's something called, you're going to love this, resting bitch face. And you see this a lot on meetings where it's just kind of like, so pay attention to what your face looks like when you're not speaking. And, I call it the Mona Lisa smile. It's just the slight smile. And what you do is you're looking at the camera more often than you're not, although obviously you're looking at other people as they're speaking. But the idea is that you want to show up as a person who is interested in what's going on and engaged. Because moods are contagious. And let's face it, when you've got the Brady Bunch screen on and more people are sitting there like this, give them resting bitch face, Arthur.
I was.
Not bitchy enough. Yeah. So, when you show up that way, it's contagious and other people pick up on that vibe. So the idea is you bring a little energy to the meetings you're going to. So have a goal. Make sure that you show up well in the meeting because other people are paying attention. And it could be that some of these people have a say over your job or your future or your career at this company. And the last thing you want is for people to see you looking down, fiddling around with papers or checking your phone or doing something else. Meetings, we still have to show up because that's what's good for us as well. Goal and non-resting bitch face.
Really, and Lynn, so one thing I forgot to mention earlier on is for people that are on the YouTube Live and the Facebook Live, in the comments section, ask your questions. The technology that we're using, we're able to take those questions and put them up on the screen for Lynn to answer. So if you have any questions for Lynn, please put them in the comments section. And something that I saw earlier that I did want to address, which is kind of interesting, a couple people mentioned, can people have more than one style? Can you be a looker and a toucher? Or can you be all three?
Mm-hmm. And that's a good question. And I say yes. Your brain operates in all three modes. You are a looker, a listener, a toucher, but you have a dominant style just the way you have a dominant hand. So there is the first style that your brain defaults to. And and that's where you go to. Because frankly, if we were all totally lookers, then we'd never connect with listeners or we'd never connect with touchers. We do have all those different parts of our brain that we can draw on. But you do have a preference, and at the same time, since we're talking about engagement, one of the really good uses of the looker, listener, toucher is paying attention to the folks who are in your team. Because a lot of times the big disconnect for lookers, so 75% of the people in the world, are listeners. For example, here's a story that I heard from a president of a company, a marketing company. And he heard me give this presentation, and he said, now this makes sense to me, because I was just interviewing a guy for a position, and he'd be an account exec, which means that he's talking to clients. And in the interview, he sat there and he never really looked at me. And I was thinking he wasn't paying attention, but every time I asked him a question, it was clear that he was tracking me, and he answered the question, and he gave me very intelligent answers. And I said, so now what do you think the guy is? And he said, well, he's a listener. And I said, here's the scoop. Now you know that 75% of your clients most likely are lookers. And they're going to have trouble with somebody who's not giving them eye contact. So no, this guy may be able to do the job, but there can be a disconnect there with clients because he's not giving them eye contact. So the question becomes, do you think he's trainable? That he can learn how to give people eye contact, and that would make him a good person to hire. But if you don't think he is, then he's not the right person for this job. So as we're taking a look at the people on our teams, it's true. Lookers and touchers have the most difficult time with listeners because these people don't give them eye contact and don't want to stand close to them. And at the same time, they do pay attention, and a lot of times you'll find listeners in technical fields. But the scoop is, you want to have all of these people on your team. You don't want to just have a team of lookers or listeners or touchers. And to know when you're having difficulty creating connection with somebody, take a look at what you think their style is. So look at their body language and pay attention to what it is that you're seeing and figuring out whether or not they're a looker or listener or toucher. And maybe that's one of the things that that has been difficult for you.
It's funny, Lynne. And by the way, I want to mention to people for Lynne's talk, if you want to watch the full talk, which is really, it's amazing. It deserves a 3.6 million views. Just go to YouTube and type in Lynne Franklin TEDx Naperville, and it'll pop up there. When we were working on your talk a couple of years ago, just my own I had a personal, like a week later, I was having a meeting with somebody, Panera Bread. And as I'm talking to them, by the way, I watch your talk like every couple of months just to remind myself. I'm talking to the person, and I talk fast, and they're like this with their eyes closed. And I'm like, I got it. They're a listener. But for me, it was a big revelation. So I slowed down, and I picked my word choice more carefully. But it really does help connect. And that was my big aha moment. And it's simple. As long as you're aware of that, you can start noticing those things. Another question we had, and we're going to bring up a question soon, but somebody, and I think this applies to everybody, especially teachers. What do you do when you're leading a Zoom meeting and it feels like nobody's paying attention? Because this is great that we're all learning how to do things, but what do you do when half the people are just asleep or they're distracted and they're looking down?
Mm-hmm. Hey, well, so let me give you an example that I've translated into Zoom. A few years ago, I was doing a program on storytelling, strategic storytelling, at a storytelling conference. And I had the coveted 3:00 in the afternoon slot, the final speaker of the day. And the person who was speaking before me had sucked the life out of the room. I mean, even the lookers weren't giving me eye contact when I stood in front of them. So I stood in front of the room and I said, okay, everybody stand up. Yep, she's going to make us stand up. So I made them stand up. And then I said, all right, on the count of 3, I want you to go, do it. 1, 2, 3. And they did it. And I said, and do it again. Good. I said, okay, now laugh and sit down. And they did. It's amazing what you can get people to do when you're standing at the front of a room. Same thing in Zoom. I actually did this on a Zoom meeting. Once again, for some reason, I seem to be the final speaker a lot. And I wanted to bring people back in the room and focus them. So have people stand up, have people stretch, have people make silly noises or anything. Once again, it's a state change. Anything that brings more energy back into the experience and then focuses people and makes them laugh. Because the scoop is we're in these meetings and it's all about technology and it's all about, moving forward on some project, but we're all freaking human beings and we need the chance to express that and to have some energy and to laugh at ourselves. And frankly, if you're going to do the little exercise, make sure everybody is on gallery view so they all get to see each other and they get to laugh too.
All right, wait. Devil's advocate here. I could see myself potentially doing that because I really don't care what people think about me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, you're at a job and maybe you're junior, you're new to the company, you have senior executives. A lot of people might be thinking, hey, Lynne, that sounds great. You're a public speaker. Arthur, he doesn't really care about what people think. I care about what people think. I'm not going to have people stand up and go like this. That's just outside my comfort zone. What's a small step that they can do that's maybe not that extreme, but that's just enough to get people, to move around a little bit?
Mm-hmm. And that's true right there. What you said, Arthur, is stand up and move. You can have people stand up and stretch. You can say, we've been on this call for a while, and I know that we need to get our energy and our focus back. And the best way to do that is to stand up and let's just stretch a little bit. That works too. It doesn't have to be quite as outrageous as making noises, but truly, how many of you have heard the phrase Zoom butt? We get it. And so to, just to be able to stand up and move the energy around in your body, people will be grateful, once again, that you acknowledge that they're human beings. And this has gone on a bit too long. And, and now it's time to get some energy back in.
Okay, so I need you two to get up and stand up and get some energy, please.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Spit around. What I got to do?
There you go.
I do something interesting there.
Whatever Jonathan tells me to do because he's smart.
I like how you reframe that, because for a lot of people, again, I do like the impact of getting up and doing something crazy. It really does get people to remember that. And they're going to remember you versus anybody else. But for people that are not comfortable with that yet, getting up and just saying, hey, can we do a quick stretch? But what I really like, this pattern I noticed, my one tip that I love at the beginning is set the expectation. Hey, I'm a visual person. I'm going to be looking at the camera, which I'm doing right now, but then I'm going to look down at the screen at you. But just setting the expectation, reminding people that we're all human. And that could be, I think that's a really good script for somebody saying, hey, before I talk, we're all human here. Do you mind if we just do a quick stretch, to the left and right, so they can make it very comfortable, very, I really like how that could really work well for a lot of people. I hope a lot of people do that and they have some great feedback. But I love that one. Well, great. Mm-hmm. Another question from Silver. Any tips for maintaining engagement on meetings where 90% of people don't turn on the cameras? That's a good question, because I've seen those meetings too, where it's like you're the only person talking and everyone else, they're not there. Mm-hmm. How do you do this? How do you fix that?
And it's true. And basically to say it is a courtesy for you to turn on your camera so that we can see you. And because part of what we all gather is information from how people are looking. If I'm speaking and then I'm looking at the gallery view, I can tell whether or not people are tracking with me. And you're right, because a lot of times people will put will turn off the camera because they need to do something, and not show up. And you need to go to the bathroom because this is your, sorry, Kevin, 14th Zoom meeting today, and nature is calling. But I think once again, to set expectations at the beginning of the session of, look, I know that there are moments when we all need to not be on the screen because for some reason, but it truly is a gift to everybody else who's here on this meeting to be able to see your face. So please leave your camera on unless there's some dire reason for you to turn it off. And if there is, then as soon as you can, turn it back on. This is a gift to everybody else who's here.
I just want to drop this real quick. I was noticing that John Saunders says having a sit-stand computer desk set up. Have you experienced people doing that where they actually change because I actually can kind of do that with this setup, but I have not played with that. I don't know if that changes anything if I'm standing here talking to the camera, but when I'm looking at you now, so these are my dilemmas. I don't know if other people have the same dilemma for the sit and stand desk. So how do you, I don't know.
And I'll be honest with you, if you happen to be running a Zoom meeting and you have the opportunity to stand rather than sit, do it. Because you have much more energy when you're standing on your feet and and moving around perhaps a little bit. As a speaker, I know this. But as a participant, if there are reasons why you can't stand up, one thing that's really helpful to do is to sit with both of your feet on the floor, not your legs crossed, but your feet on the floor, because there's a certain energy that you get, and at the same time, a certain calmness that you get from this. It's one of the power poses out there. So sit that way. It also helps you pay attention. So you're right. If you can do a sit or a desk that stands up, great, do it. But at the same time, I always encourage people, figure out what works for you. And if it's standing, then hey, do it. If it's sitting, fine. But make sure what you're doing is you're doing things that keep yourself engaged in the meeting. And all right, so here's something I do. I call it the brown thought cloud. So it's a situation where somebody says something, and what I'd really love to do is say some snarky thing back to them. And I know I can't because I'll get in trouble. So what I do instead is, if I were a cartoon character, this would be the brown thought cloud that shows up above my head. So I say the snarky thing to myself, and I laugh about just how witty I am. And then I get back into whatever it is that's going on. So you can take your own little brain vacation with the brown thought cloud to keep yourself engaged. If the person who's running the meeting is not doing enough state changes and doing things to get you more engaged, hey, do it for yourself.
Interesting. No, I really think about the standing thing, because it feels weird, at least for me, at my desk, because it's not a standing desk. But I'll have to play with that. But I like the energy. I think you have a point. Another question. Good. This is one from Carol. I've noticed you're wearing red in your two talks. Have you done that for a reason? That's a good question. Is a solid color better to wear on the Zoom meetings? Obviously, a looker. Yeah, it's a really good question on the visuals. How do you respond to that one?
Okay, so number one, I look good in red. Number two, it's TEDx, so I have to wear red. But red is when I was doing a Zoom, one of the many 7 other Zoom meetings I was doing today, I wore colors that were appropriate for my audience. And and it's true. What you do is you pay attention to the people that you're hanging out with, and I default to brighter colors on Zoom so that I don't fade into the background, so that I do have a presence there. It's not always red. Earlier today it was purple and blue and several other colors. But wear clothes that are simple, so there's not a complicated pattern to them. And particularly, it's like, this is TV, folks. So you don't wear plaids and stripes and things that go wah-wah on the camera and and bleed around. Because the last thing you want people to be paying attention to, to your face and to the things that you're saying, not the clothes you're wearing.
What about the bank on that question? Should you be here? I mean, obviously you don't want to be in a meeting here. Is there like a magic formula for where you should be placing yourself? Because I just do this just because that's just seems what's right. But is there a standard rule of thumb for where you should position yourself?
And as I answer that question, the first thing that pops to my mind is make sure that your background is not overpowering you, because part of it. Well, you got to. It's TEDx. You got a big X there. Okay, we can get behind that. But part of it becomes, how far you sit from the camera also is determined by the background that you have. So, so I've got a big piece of furniture behind me, but there are usually chairs sitting around here. I move the chairs out so that, so that the background feels cleaner. Then it doesn't really matter how close I am to the camera. You want to have a good amount of space between you and the top here, because the last thing you want is to be right up here and have your head cut off. So some of it's just center yourself in the screen, and and make sure that the atmosphere around you is not too distracting. And there you go.
Look at Patricia had a comment that says she's a toucher, but she's distracted by moving hands in the reflection of the cabinets behind you. So it's interesting that you can actually have a reflection. I didn't notice that. but that's something to be aware of. That there could be reflection. Now I'm paranoid about reflection in my office too. Thanks, Patricia. More
Okay,
things for me to think about.
You've shared it, Patricia. Thank you.
And a couple of questions as we're closing up. You brought us something interesting at the beginning that, with having an agenda, and it's kind of funny. I really believe that all these Zoom meetings, all they did is they showed how bad meetings are in general, but the only good things about a meeting were the before and after doing the social chat. And you brought up a good point about to make a better Zoom meeting, you have an agenda, just like, meetings 101, which nobody ever does. But what can you do in advance for a Zoom meeting that's outside of standard meeting planning? Is there anything you can do in advance to get better adoption and get to build connections with people?
And, a lot of times, you once again, this feels like TV because it really kind of is. And one of the things that you can do is that you can reach out to people who are coming to the meetings, particularly people that other folks follow, and say, it's really important that could you do me a favor? It's really important that you keep your camera on throughout the entire meeting, because if you do it, other people will follow. So if you're looking for a particular kind of behavior, get other people in the room who are doing that, or ask them if they will, ask a particular question or make a particular point. Because what ends up happening is that when you ask people to do things in advance, or they volunteer to do things in advance, once again, it keeps them engaged, and moods are contagious. And when people, because we've all been to those meetings where everybody's having a good time and everybody's learning from everybody else and new ideas are shared. And we've been to the meetings where everybody just sits there and it's like, shoot me in the head sooner rather than later. And it's because the level of energy is not there. So do things like the state changes, have people stand up, have people go into breakout rooms, ask people questions, and let them know that this stuff is going to happen in advance. Because, let's face it, if you just spring it on them at the meeting, and I'm a listener and I wasn't expecting to talk, and I usually don't talk at meetings, and Arthur, you turn to me and say, so Lynn, what are you thinking about this? And I get the deer in the headlights thing. In advance, set up the expectations. Maybe it's through the agenda, maybe it's through engaging people and letting them know what things are going to be like before they show up, and maybe it's asking for help. So those are the sorts of things that prep people, so people come prepared, and they know that this is not one of those meetings where they can just let it slide.
I really like that comment about setting expectations, and back to that made up person that's like a junior or they're new to the company, but reaching out to somebody senior. I think that's actually a really brilliant move, because if you're very introverted and you're afraid to even tell people to get up and stretch, just reaching out to somebody like a senior level person and saying, hey, it's important. I'm going to ask you a question, and can you be interested? And that gets them interested, and that sends a social signal to everybody else that they need to be interested. That's a really clever way to get people. I like that. And I could see somebody out there that's wants that physical, that I love the 7-minute rule, but I could see somebody junior saying, even telling somebody senior, can you do me a favor? Can you just tell everybody to stretch for me? Well, I get somebody else to do it.
Right.
Because we're all human.
Right.
This is really great.
And people usually like to help. If you ask for somebody's help, most of the time people will be glad to do that, because they appreciate being asked, and it puts the spotlight on them a little bit too, which they appreciate.
Yeah, really great. So we're going to be coming up to a close. And I just want to rehash. I love the concept of really setting expectations. I'd love everybody to watch your TEDx Naperville talk. Just Lynne Franklin, TEDx Naperville on YouTube.
Hey, and Arthur, I'm going to toss the final poll in here.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Because here's the important thing. Once again, most meetings just end. Most programs just end. And guess what? The neuroscience is that within a week you will forget 80% of what you've heard here today. And I want this to move the needle for you. So Jonathan is going to put up our last poll, which is going to ask you, what are you going to do differently in the next week? Because that's another neuroscience thing. If you're going to make a change, if you don't do it within a week, chances are you never will. And I want this to have made a difference for you. You've invested your time. So pick the one thing that you heard tonight that you're going to practice in the course of the next week to make a difference for not only your experience at Zoom meetings, but for the people around you. So sorry to cut you off, Arthur.
No.
Back at it.
Great question. And I already have mine set expectations because I've said it like 5 or 6 times. But I've learned the hard way. I love surprises. I love mysteries, but I found out that a lot of people don't. And again, the long story, I learned the hard way. And it's a simple, if anybody, for me, a takeaway is if I can just set expectations for every type of Zoom meeting, saying, hey, everybody, I'm going to be looking up here, looking down here. After 5 or 6, 7 minutes, I might do something silly where we take a break. We're all human. Let's go. I mean, that's all you need to do. And I think people are so dumbed down, and Kevin would be a perfect Kevin we need to have Kevin on for a therapy session. I think the poor guy, 19, or maybe that's normal. I don't know. But it'd be interesting. It would be interesting to hear from somebody like Kevin that does some of these techniques to see what happens. And Kevin, please reach out to us at info@tedxnaperville.com or the comment section. You'd be a good example to see if this has any change when you're dealing with 19 Zoom calls a day. Because what is that? That's like one every half hour. Not even that. More than that. But Lynn, Jonathan, if you can bring up and we will bring up the poll while people are filling that out. But in the meantime, can you pull up information where people can get in touch with you? There we go. You can get in touch with Lynne Franklin at lynnefranklin.com. She has a book on Amazon. LinkedIn, LinkedIn/Lynne Franklin. And you have a YouTube channel. And Lynn also has on her website, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn, you have the little video, it's a mailing list where she sends out videos every week or so with little neuroscience tidbits. And I love it because I always learn something new. So I definitely recommend everybody to sign up for that and watch her TEDx Naperville talk and put it on, flag it as a favorite and watch it every 2 or 3 months, just as a reminder. And Jonathan, if you want to pull up the poll.
And also on my YouTube channel, just for grins, ever since the pandemic started, every week I do what I call the Pandemic Songbook, which is I take a popular song of many different kinds, and then I change the lyrics and turn them into something about the pandemic or current events. So go on, if you just need a grin, go on there and check out the Pandemic Songbook.
Wait, the person that says she stands up and has everybody go like this, sing songs of parodies. Hey, how about you open up your next meeting with that? That'd be a good one. Oh, Lynn, I love your creativity. I love your boldness. It really, I think a lot of takeaways for me is it's all about being human, being vulnerable. I think that's a lot of it too. But before we leave, any last comments or thoughts you want to leave anybody? If a lot of people only remember the beginning, the middle, the end, what's one thing you want to leave people so that they can combat and get through this Zoom fatigue?
Okay, and it really does revolve around the poll. Pick one thing you're going to do differently in the course of the next week. And my overachievers know you can't have 3. One thing. And another good thing is to let somebody else know you're doing this and get them to do it along with you. So you're not doing it by yourself. It's good old accountability, because we all make promises to ourselves that we're going to change, and we are full of crap. Because we're going to go back to doing the same things that we've always done because that's easy. But to make a change and let somebody else know, I'm going to do this, hold me accountable to it, it makes all the difference in the world. So goal setting is really important and accountability is important. So do these things, honest to goodness. Even one small thing can make your next Zoom meeting bearable.
I agree. Thank you so much for being a guest, Lynn. Appreciate that. And for people that are watching on the Facebook Live or YouTube Live, when this is done, it will be archived, and we want people to share it. We get more views on the virtual salons by people sharing and rewatching after the talks are done. We had a bunch of people asking if they could see this later. So please share that. Save the date for TEDx Naperville on November 14th. It is going to be in the late afternoon, about from 4 p.m., 4 till 7. We are going to have something I didn't announce yet either, and you guys get the first insight. We're going to be doing TEDx Naperville Virtual Idea Adventures. Nokia is one of our big partners, visionary partners this year, and they're going to be doing a virtual idea adventure about telemedicine. And if you think telemedicine is just a Zoom with a doctor and a patient, you'll be really wowed of what the underlying technology that Nokia has developed on telemedicine. It's really fascinating. And another TEDx Naperville Idea Adventure, and you'll be the first ones to know about this. Nobody knows yet. We're going to be doing a viewing party with a documentary called Accidental Courtesy, and that features TEDx Naperville's alumni speaker, Daryl Davis. And after we're gonna do some experimentation. We're gonna try to watch this documentary all together so we can chat while we're watching. And at the end of it, Daryl Davis will come on board for 45 minutes to an hour of Q&A. And if nobody knows who Daryl Davis is, just Google Daryl Davis. You'll find out pretty quickly. He has, I think, 8.6 million views. He's our top most watched TEDx Naperville talk. He has a solution for ending racism in the entire world, and we love him to death. And we look forward to having him as a Q&A session where you can interact with him. Other than that, I'd like to say thank you so much. We'll see you guys soon, and thanks for being part of the TEDx Naperville Virtual Salon. Thank you.
Human beings, we're wired to be connected. From birth, we look for that connection. Where internet connectivity ends and a non-connected society exists, the desire exists to be connected. Once they find connectivity, this city starts to grow. It grows first from an educational perspective.
No longer can the top 3 goals of education be reading, writing, and arithmetic.